reputable historian attempts to write an accurate account of the history of the early settlement of Kentucky without according a front-page position to an account of the early settlement of Ruddles Mills, since there is no other spot in central Kentucky around which more frontier history was made.
That's an awful big statement for such a small place. But Ruddles Mills is the third oldest settlement and the oldest continuously inhabited community in Kentucky. The village is named for Isaac Ruddle, who came from the Shenandoah Valley of Virginia with his wife Elizabeth and settled here in 1776. He built his cabin near a spring near the confluence of Hingston and Stoner Creeks. These two streams form the south branch of the Licking River. Of course, in 1776, the Revolutionary War was going on, and in the West, the British had allied with the Indians against the settlers.
A fort had been built by Captain John Hingston 3 miles downriver, but had been abandoned in 1776. In response to war parties roaming the wilderness, Ruddle and a party of settlers repaired and reoccupied the fort. It became one of the largest and strongest in Kentucky, capable of accommodating 200 to 300 people with a garrison of 49 men. On June 22, 1780, British Colonel Henry Byrd led a force of 1,000 Canadian and Indian troops against the fort. Faced with 6 cannon, Captain Ruddle surrendered, having made a deal to spare the lives of the settlers. However, the Shawnee Indians, being the greater number of the force, claimed the prisoners. They killed many and separated the families. The bodies of the dead were covered with rocks. Years later, their remains were moved and reburied in the Lair family vault at the Cedars. The Ruddle family consisted of Isaac, his wife Elizabeth, son Stephen, who was 12, and Abram, who was 6, 2 daughters and a 3-year-old who was killed in the massacre. They remained in captivity for 4 years until the end of the Revolutionary War. Isaac and Elizabeth returned to Ruddles Mills and cleared the land surrounding their cabin. A bronze marker that stands in Ruddles Mills states, "Near his home, Isaac Ruddle built a grist mill in 1788 on the north side of Hingston Bridge and a sawmill 1795 to be operated by his son Abram." Stephen and Abram Ruddle had both been adopted by Indian families and married Indian women. Abram returned and settled on the north bank of Hingston Creek and ran the sawmill. He also served in the War of 1812. Stephen refused to return unless he could bring his wife and her family. As a result, he became a missionary and a representative of the Coopers Run Baptist Church to the Shawnee Indians. In 1810, he was ordained a minister of the gospel and often returned to speak at Ruddles Mills.
It's difficult to believe now, but due to the excellent water facilities, there were log, cotton, woolen, and flour mills, cabinet shops, and many distilleries in the early days of Ruddles Mills.
The bronze marker says, "A 720 spindle cotton mill erected 500 feet west by Thomas and Hugh Brent in 1828, burned 1836. Soon rebuilt by Abram Spears, it also spun wool until about 1855. At one time, Ruddles Mills was even being considered for the Bourbon County seat.
There's a local story that when Ruddles Mills was being considered for the county seat, Elizabeth Ruddle objected because she said, "We'll have all those strangers coming into town and they'll be getting into my apples." Isaac Ruddle died in 1812 and his wife Elizabeth in 1815. They're buried in the Stoner Mouth Cemetery in Ruddles Mills, on land that he had donated to the Stoner Mouth Presbyterian Church. Evelyn Kaiser, in a short history written in 1966, commented, "There they lie in uncared-for graves."
The good news is that the cemetery is no longer uncared for. In January 2006, Historic Ruddles Mills Incorporated received a grant from the state to restore the Stoner Mouth Presbyterian Church Cemetery. Since then, we have repaired many of the tombstones, had a new entrance built into the stone wall, and made access for mowing and maintenance. A special marker was erected and dedicated to the memory of Isaac Ruddle. There is still much to be done, but a start has been made to preserve and remember the history of this most significant place in the early history of Kentucky.